It's October 12th, 2025, and a stunning revelation has shaken the foundations of the Russia-China partnership. Ukrainian intelligence has exposed and dismantled a massive Chinese-funded supply network worth nearly $2 billion, a shadow system designed to keep Russia's war machine alive under global sanctions. What began as a secret trade network between allies has erupted into a crisis stretching from Moscow to Beijing, changing the course of the war and the balance of power across Eurasia. For years, Russia depended on China for survival. When Western sanctions cut off its access to chips and navigation systems, Beijing quietly stepped in. Using intermediaries in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Mongolia, it disguised military hardware as civilian cargo. Containers labeled construction materials actually carried drone engines, microchips, and guidance electronics. On paper, it was Central Asian development. In reality, it was a secret life support system for Moscow's defense industry. Chinese state firms like the Harbin Industrial Group and Heilongjiang Export Bureau helped move key components that later surfaced in Russian missiles and drones. These shipments kept Russia's factories alive even as Western pressure tightened. In mid-2025, Ukraine's military intelligence, the GUR, noticed something odd. Freight moving from northern China through Mongolia into Russia had surged 40%. Customs records listed harmless goods, but satellites told a different story. Armored containers, night convoys, and armed guards. With Western help, Ukrainian analysts traced the shipments to depots in Irkutsk, Ulan-Ude, and Nizhny Novgorod, sites tied directly to missile and drone production. By September, Kyiv concluded China was running a covert $2 billion operation to prop up Russia's war effort. Then came a revelation that sent shockwaves across the globe. On October 4th, Ukraine publicly accused China of supplying satellite imagery and targeting data to Russia. Reuters later confirmed the report, citing Ukrainian intelligence that Beijing had provided high-resolution orbital photos to guide Russian missile strikes on Ukrainian energy grids and military sites. Beijing dismissed the claim as disinformation, but the timing exposed the truth. Even as Russian strikes intensified, Chinese cargo still crossed the border. For Kyiv, the illusion of Chinese neutrality was shattered. 2 days later, on October 6th, Ukraine struck back. It launched one of the most extensive drone operations of the war. Swarms of long-range drones hit deep inside Russia, targeting an ammunition plant near Nizhny Novgorod, an oil terminal in Crimea, and logistics depots linked to Chinese trade routes. Verified footage showed massive secondary explosions tearing through the night sky. The Irkutsk logistics hub, responsible for nearly half of China's rail cargo into Russia's defense network, was obliterated. Within 24 hours, Russia suspended parts of the Trans-Siberian Railway. Ukrainian cyber units followed up by jamming customs databases and cargo trackers, freezing logistics for days. In a single sweep, Ukraine severed the arteries feeding Russia's imported war lifeline. Inside China, panic spread quietly. Firms tied to the scheme saw contracts frozen. Shipments from Heilongjiang to Russia dropped sharply. Trade data showed a 40% fall in dual-use exports through Central Asia in 1 week. State media stayed silent, but insiders revealed that the Ministry of Commerce had launched internal audits. Several executives vanished from public view, a sign that Beijing was cleaning house behind closed doors. The financial loss was painful, but the diplomatic damage was worse. What was once hidden was now headline news. In Brussels, EU officials revived plans for secondary sanctions on Chinese companies aiding Russia. Washington prepared a new wave of penalties targeting Eurasian logistics. Britain, France, and Germany moved toward using frozen Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine, a powerful symbol that every covert supporter of Moscow would now face consequences. Inside Russia, the economic fallout deepened. The ruble plunged past 130 per dollar. Factories that depended on Chinese chips halted production. The Kremlin called the attacks terrorism, but internal reports confirmed that supply shortages were crippling missile and drone manufacturing. Social networks overflowed with videos of stranded trains and empty fuel stations. For ordinary Russians, it was now clear. Even China couldn't guarantee stability. For Xi Jinping, Ukraine's precision strikes forced a painful choice. China needs Russia as a buffer and energy supplier, but it cannot afford sanctions that could cripple its export-driven economy. Within days, Chinese diplomats privately initially assured Europe that trade routes with Russia would be reviewed. Satellite imagery later confirmed reduced freight activity along the Sino-Mongolian border. Without firing a single shot at Beijing, Ukraine had pushed China into retreat. This was no accident. Since 2024, Ukraine has built one of Europe's most advanced military intelligence systems. It fuses AI-guided targeting, electronic warfare, and real-time satellite feeds into a unified network. The October operation proved that modern wars are fought across every domain: cyber, space, economy, and information. The ripple spread across Central Asia. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan tightened inspections on Russia-bound cargo. Kazakhstan announced new tracking systems to prevent sanction evasion, signaling a careful shift away from Moscow. For China, it was another blow. Its Belt and Road Initiative, once the backbone of Eurasian trade, was slowing under global scrutiny. Inside Moscow, frustration mounted. With Chinese aid under the spotlight, the Kremlin's list of reliable allies shrank. Iran still supplies drones, but in limited numbers. North Korea provides shells, but logistics and quality issues persist. Without China's funding and transport systems, Russia's missile output is expected to decline sharply before winter. Officially, China insists it supports peace, while denying any military hand. But its silence after the Ukrainian strikes spoke louder than words. State media pivoted to domestic stories, avoiding any mention of Ukraine. Analysts now believe Beijing is quietly recalibrating, focusing inward on economic recovery while cooling its partnership with Moscow. Supporting Russia is no longer an asset, it's a liability. Ukraine's victory was not just material, it was psychological and symbolic. Kyiv's intelligence work now commands international respect. Western agencies share data faster than ever. At home, morale soared as images of the Irkutsk explosion went viral, becoming a symbol of justice and technological superiority. As China withdraws, new partners advance. The EU and Ukraine are deepening defense collaboration. Turkish and Baltic companies are investing in reconstruction. Meanwhile, Russia faces an industrial chokehold. Analysts predict its war production could fall by 30% before winter if China keeps its distance. The October events highlight a deeper truth about modern warfare. Victory now depends on controlling supply, data, and narrative. Ukraine's ability to expose and destroy China's billion-dollar pipeline proved that intelligence and precision can outweigh numbers and size. Covert economic lifelines have become fair military targets. Timing made the blow even sharper. Around October 10th, Western nations advanced plans to use frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's defense. Isolated sanctions have evolved into a unified economic front. Russia's isolation is no longer temporary, it's structural. With supply chains fractured and allies fading, the Kremlin faces a bleak road ahead. Domestic factories are slowing, costs are rising, and the technological gap is widening. Each drone or missile now costs more and performs worse. Even Russian insiders admit the country cannot sustain high-intensity warfare beyond 2026 without new foreign input. Ukraine's precision strike didn't just cripple logistics, it accelerated Russia's exhaustion. When Xi and Putin declared their no-limits partnership in 2022, they imagined an enduring alliance. 3 years later, that promise is unraveling. The cost of helping Russia now outweighs any strategic benefit. Ukraine's operation showed that hidden cooperation can bring visible global consequences: economic, diplomatic, and reputational. This may mark the quiet collapse of the decade's most powerful authoritarian partnership. For Ukraine, this victory is more than defense. It's a transformation. The country now fights in every dimension: land, air, cyber, economy, and diplomacy. By dismantling China's $2 billion network, it didn't just defend itself, it reshaped the war's geography and momentum. Every strike pushes Russia closer to isolation and Ukraine closer to independence. As of October 12, 2025, Ukraine stands not merely as a nation at war, but as a nation rewriting the definition of modern warfare. The destruction of China's $2 billion lifeline to Russia marks a turning point, proof that truth, technology, and determination can defeat secrecy and scale. China now faces a reckoning with its covert ambitions. Russia faces industrial collapse, and the world faces a new reality. Ukraine is no longer the underdog. It is the architect of a new global order built on intelligence, adaptability, and unyielding resolve. Historians may remember October 2025 as the month Ukraine didn't just defend its borders, it severed an empire's last lifeline.